Ian over here at FICMRepair. Repair. We're shooting videos about alternators here lately, evidently. And so here's a question that comes up, and basically the question is, can I have too large of an alternator? And the answer is no. Why? Because they're internally voltage regulated. Just because you can bench 2.5 doesn't mean that weight that you're about to pick up is 250 pounds, does it? And yet you can, like magic sauce, pick it up. Yeah, because it's 5 pounds. It's no big deal. It's the same way with voltage regulation. So when your alternator sees a load, and say it sees a 40 amp draw, it says, hey, I can go ahead and I can cover that 40 amp draw. Life is good for me. But say it sees a 400 amp draw, and it's like, man, I can only do like 130 amps, or in the case of this 270, he's asking about 180 amps to offset that 400 amp draw. What's it gonna do? The best it can. It's gonna pick as much of that load up as it possibly can. But can it offset all of the draw of that? No, it cannot. And so please pay attention. Depth of discharge on batteries is a very, very, very real thing. If you, so step one, can you go ahead and install a larger alternator than is reasonably needed right now without having any fears of having a problem? Yes, you absolutely can. Like, for example, our 400 amp alternator that does like 320 amps at cold idle. Yeah, right. And by the way, there's a high idle mod. Just do a search on that on your buddy YouTube, and you can make it so you can flip a switch, and all of a sudden you're at 1100 RPM. And so now all of a sudden you're going to get the very most you possibly can, for all intents, about 95-ish, 90, depending on the alternator power curve band of what that alternator can do, but at 1100 RPM. So when you're ready to winch something, flip that switch and get more out of the alternator to decrease the depth of discharge on your batteries. But just watch them through your monitor, because you're running an Edge Insight CTS3, just saying, and verify that you're not dropping below 11 volts for a fact, period. So when you're winching, and most winch operations are, they're not that long. 5 minutes is all, maybe something like that, right? So just watch your batteries, and if they need to recover for a little bit, allow them to, and that way you don't have a problem. But does it make sense? So I shot my other video and I was saying, hey, look, if you live in a cold climate, a 240 amp alternator is plenty, because it does 190 at cold idle, because the glow plug draw is 230, and okay, fine, that's a reasonable step forward. Why wouldn't somebody choose our 320 amp alternator that does 250 at cold idle? Money. Yeah. That's the entirety of the reason. It's just money. And that's a great reason, by the way. So if you wanted to go ahead and you wanted to winch just every once in a great blue while, you could get by with like our 240 amp alternator and do fine. But the more often you see yourself using these things, the more often it makes sense to say, hey, maybe I should put that 320 up in there, that 370 up in there, that 400 amp up in there to better offset this draw. So if you winch professionally or plow commercially, because take a look at the amp draw off of your, even your poly plows, it's obscene, right? And I'm not worried about the one time that the plow blade picks up. I'm worried about the fact that you just picked it up 15 times in the last 27 minutes, right? Or even more in that parking lot that you've got the snow plow contracting job for, right? Or if you have a massive inverter that you're running circular saws off and all this kind of stuff, just take a look at what the amp draw on that is, and it's probably 80% of rated capacity. So if you've got a 1,000 watt inverter, it's pulling 800 watts actually, but there's a 20% loss because of DC to AC rectification. Go Google it. At any rate, it's just not 100% efficient. So every time you switch from DC to AC to AC to DC and etc., you lose, which is why it's so much better to go ahead and get a DC powered whatever, and that way you don't have that loss, right? But regardless, it depends, what your frequency of use is going to be. So, it's kind of like you can bench press 250. Okay, what does that mean? It means you can do it once. Well, what happens if you need to bench press 250 like 100 times? Then probably your max isn't 250, is it? So you wouldn't go ahead and get a 250 amp, a guy that can bench 250 and have him wait 30 minutes in between helping you, would you? No, you'd get a stronger dude, right? And so it's the same conversation with alternators. So the more of the alternator, the more of this system draw you can cover, the longer your batteries are gonna last. That's just the way that it is. It's a little bit of a religious discussion as far as which one do you get. Do you get the 270, the 320, the 240, the 400? What path do you want to go? And for most of us, we kind of tend on the side of reasonable. But, I'll tell you, the other thing is if you buy like a USA Diesel branded alternator, we'll recase that bad boy for like $150 in today's monies to work with that 6.7, to work with that Cummins, to work with that 6.6 Duramax. So if you later on decide to upgrade, say you've got a 7.3 or a 6.0, which use the exact same alternator, and then later on you switch over to a 6.4. Well, it's the same case, but it's a different voltage regulation solution. And so we could help you can convert that. Or if it's 6.7, it's a totally different case. And we can go ahead and convert that for you. So this could be the last alternator you ever buy. And so that has some play here as well. So say, how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go? There's also a conversation about what are your trip lengths? If you were doing a 5-minute trip, a 5-minute trip is very, very different than a 45-minute trip, an hour trip. If you're one of these guys, and you can use battery life historically as a measure against this to say, how big of a problem is this for me? So most of our customers, they only get 2 years out of their batteries before they have switched to a larger alternator from us. That's a conventional use truck. Hey, I'm driving 10 miles to work, 15 miles to work, and I'm coming back every day. And I drive this thing most every day. Yes, you're gonna get about 2 years out of your batteries if you're like the rest of us national average. If you're like, no man, I get like 7-8 years out of my batteries. Awesome. Well, that tells me that a bigger alternator is less important for you. Now, we understand that batteries are money, and by the way, my favorite batteries from a cost perspective are from Costco or Sam's Club. We shot videos on that before, so take a look at those guys before you can go on them. You can get an interstate set of batteries from Costco for like sub $130, I want to say, and I know that Sam's Club is pretty similar with their Deca manufactured batteries, and so it's a 3-year warranted group size 65, but those are lead acid batteries. They're not AGM, so if you migrate to absorbed glass match style batteries, they accept a charge much more quickly than do the lead acid brethren. And so they're like, oh, look, you have electrons. I too like electrons. So shorter trips become less of a thing because the alternator will recharge the batteries faster and you'll have less of a problem. But can you have too large of an alternator? No, you cannot, right? Because they're voltage regulated. Now, the issue is, of course, like I mentioned in my last video, you have to add to the factory's wiring if the goal is to not have a truck fire, or minimally burn some stuff up, or minimally shorten the life of your alternator by having it push entirely too hard against this little itty bitty wire that just can't play. So it's not necessarily, it's a conversation about ampacity, sure, the electrical carrying ability of wire, but it's also a conversation about resistance. And so you don't want to have that alternator work harder than it needs to. So you don't want think of it like back pressure. You don't want the back pressure there. So instead of living with your 16,500 circular mil 8-gauge wire off the back, think about augmenting to 105,000 circular mil wire, and we're going to have another video on wiring and the reasons, the considerations when making your own wire, or if you want to buy ours or whatever the case is. But at any rate, I hope this helps somebody. You can't have too large of an alternator, so even if you live in the hottest of climate, but you've got some crazy stereo, or you've got some massive inverter, or you've got a plow or a winch or something that draws some serious electrons, then you're a poster child for going ahead and having something more. And by the way, on your sound system, let's touch on that quick before we wrap up this video. If you are thumping, it's just watts divided by 13.5 volts is amps. You take that number, divide it by 2, whatever that number becomes. So 1,000 watts divided by 13.5 volts, as an example, divided by 2, that's the duty cycle that you should have of your alternator on top of the 65 hot idle amps that Ford gave you. So that'll help you size for a proper alternator in the future, and size it for what your future is. If you're only running 6x9s right now and you're thinking about migrating to dual 15s, let's buy let's hook you up with the alternator that you won't have to buy another one of, okay? And that way we have to sell it to you just one time, which makes me happy. Few things are more irritating than having to do things twice. FICMRepair.com. We are all in this together. You got further questions about this? Drop us a note, contact us on the website, that link there, or just give us a call, 515-897-4459. Thank you.